Next week is summer leaders, and so when I
everyone. It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 at 5:30. Is this working? I guess. Let's see if that works. All right. Try now.
Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 at 5:32 p.m. And we are calling this regular meeting of the Wake County Board of Education to order. And I want to welcome those of you that are watching at home and those that are here in the person to observe as the Board of Education conducts its official business. I want to take a moment to highlight our Board Policy 2310, which states, Wake County Board of Education meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. The public is cordially invited to attend board meetings to observe the board as it conducts its official business. Persons who willfully interrupt, disrupt, or cause disturbances at an official meeting may be directed to leave by the presiding officer. Members of the audience should show respect for speakers by refraining from loud comments or other disruptions by any person or persons of a public meeting will be subject to action in accordance with General Statute 143-318.17. All 9 board members are present, as well as Superintendent Moore and our board attorney, Jonathan Blumberg. At this point, if you would all join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We are going to move on to the information portion of our agenda, which begins with comments from Superintendent Moore.
Good evening. 4 students are among the more than 1,200 winners in the most recent round of National Merit Scholarships. In this final of 4 rounds of the prestigious scholarship program, sponsor colleges or universities have selected winners from among finalists who plan to attend their school. These awards provide between $500 and $2,000 annually for up to 4 years. As you may recall, 5 WCPSS students won National Merit-sponsored scholarships last month, 10 won in May, and 7 won corporate-sponsored awards in April. The latest winners are Ryan Richards of Athens Drive Magnet High School, Sai Tumapali of Enloe Magnet High School, and Rupak Biswas and Faith Kim of Green Level High School. Congratulations to these outstanding students on this high honor. Congratulations are also in order for our facilities team, who recently were honored alongside our partners with a Climate Action Award for their work on the Southeast Raleigh Elementary School and YMCA partnership. Raleigh's Environmental Advisory Board, in awarding this Climate Action Award for Equity, noted that the Southeast Raleigh Elementary School and YMCA is the result of exemplary collaboration between WCPSS, YMCA of the Triangle, the City of Raleigh, Southeast Raleigh Promise, Ratio Architects, and many planners, designers, and contractors. Completed in 2019, the school and YMCA on Rock Quarry Road share spaces that serve students and YMCA members. The building has a number of environmentally friendly features, including rainwater cisterns and rooftop and ground level gardens. Most of the school's population receive free breakfast and lunch on site. 4th and 5th grade students take swimming lessons at the Y as a part of their physical education classes, an effort designed in part to combat the data that shows disproportionately high rate of drownings among African American children compared to their white peers. The YMCA also offers special rate membership pricing to better support residents who live in the neighbor zone. In summary, this collaboration is extending services to communities in need while simultaneously demonstrating environmental action towards Raleigh's ultimate climate goals. This is a major win-win for this entire community, and I'm proud of the integral role our school district played in making this project a success. Finally, this evening, Herbert Akins Road Middle School opened its doors for the first time earlier this month, one of 4 new schools welcoming students this school year. The Herbert Akins Nighthawks are enjoying 3 stories of classroom labs and workspaces, interactive touchscreen boards in each classroom, open collaboration spaces throughout the hallways, auditorium with cutting-edge sound and control systems, gymnasiums with maple floors, automated divider curtains, and seating for more than 1,600 people. That used to be what we built high schools for. No longer. Off the editorializing. Next month, Apex Friendship Elementary, Barton Pond Elementary, and the Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies will also open. I'm grateful to the county commissioners and the voters of Wake County for their ongoing support of our facilities needs. The commissioners have approved a ballot initiative this fall for additional bond funding that will pay for new schools, school replacements, and renovations, and additional upgrades in buildings across the entire district. We know that students perform better when they have access to adequate facilities. In fact, our stakeholders have indicated that this should be a priority in our updated strategic plan. We plan to add a 7th core belief that states every student and all staff deserve to work in optimal learning environments supported by sufficient resources, well-maintained facilities, and effective operational systems. Investing in our schools' facilities is an investment in the lives of children and the future of this community. And here's a quick look at the new Herbert Akins Road Middle School. Nice and quick. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. Certainly a strong and warm welcome back to our year-round students. We know that that turnaround is quick, but we know that it is meaningful to start a new school year. And thank you for highlighting our newest District 8 school that opened. We are very thankful for Principal Adkins and her team for jumping in and being ready to serve their new middle school students. I want to thank Wake Ed Partnership with their ongoing Tools for Schools teacher store. They have gotten school supplies in record numbers. They are doing a drive right now. I would direct anyone over to their website for more information, but we certainly appreciate the help and support of the community in order to help our students and our teachers. And for our year-round families or our modified families who start next week, sign up to volunteer. Our schools are open, so join your PTA, go into the front office, fill out that background form, and we'd love to have you in the buildings. So please, please, please come back, come join us. Our doors are open. And those are the end of my comments. Vice Chair Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. I appreciate it. Welcome back, everybody. I know we had a little break there and some of our time off, and I know everyone has been busy. I've been seeing you around the district. A couple things again. I also want to extend my thanks to Wake Ed Partnership. The Tools for Schools program has been great. We had just a put something out as a message just to folks in my area, and we had about 3 boxes of supplies just come in one night up there in the Leesville Road area, with a lot of people just being very generous and opening up and wanting to come out and support their teachers and support their schools. If the average teacher spends about $520, $530 of their own money on supplies, just do the math with 11,000 teachers, you're talking millions of dollars in additional need that get paid for out of pocket by our teachers. And if you think about that, I mean, can you think of any other profession where we do that? It's not like we ask our doctors to bring their own Band-Aids to work, but yet we're asking that of our teachers, So kudos to Wake Ed Partnership and to all the people participating in this wonderful supply drive. Also, Wake Ed Partnership's Career Accelerator is taking off soon. That's a really exciting program. I think about 400 high school students will be coming out, getting involved in career technical education with a lot of our community partners. Very exciting program, and it's great to see those kinds of collaboration continue. I do want to highlight one special ceremony that we had back on July 12th. I want to extend my gratitude and appreciation to the town of Morrisville, who opened up and at their council meeting recognized our Outstanding Teacher of the Year finalists and our teaching assistant finalists from all the Morrisville schools. So the mayor and the town council invited all of the teachers, the principals, our area superintendent, Cedric Williams, and I were out there, and at special resolutions, commendations were given out to Carpenter Elementary's Evan Finch and Tim Wheeler, Cedar Fork Elementary's Jermaine Howell and Heba Gabar, Morrisville Elementary, Teacher of the Year, Monica Moore, and Parkside Elementary, Teacher of the Year, Soraya Ware. And so, again, that was just another wonderful event showing the support that our public schools have out there in the community of Morrisville. So, last thing out there in terms of recognition, there was I don't know if anyone sees 919 magazine, there was a wonderful feature on Principal Stephanie Costa and the new Barton Pond Elementary School opening up. That's your principal? Well, we'll agree to joint custody then, okay? Just a lot of excitement about the new schools opening. As Superintendent Moore said, Barton Pond, we saw Herbert Aiken, the Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies, and others opening up. So an exciting school year, especially for those year-round schools that are in school right now. Thank you.
All right, so let's go around the table, and I promise I'm just going to go around in a circle this time, and we will start with Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chairman Haffey, and it's good to be back with all of you. Thank you to Superintendent Moore for highlighting our YMCA partnership. I was able to visit the Boys and Girls Club, another important partnership this week. Went to the Brentwood site and got a tour of their summer program where they're offering both meals and activities to students during this important summer years, and how important a partner they are to us throughout the school year in supporting our students. They have 7 sites, and we're going to be opening up an 8th. So I know they've extended invitations. I encourage you all to get up to date on what the Boys and Girls Club are doing for our students. Also appreciate the highlight of the capital plan and the work that the commissioners have done to finalize putting a bond on our November ballot. I think one of the things that were highlighted during COVID is how important it is for our students and our staff to be in healthy buildings, and how important it is for us to keep up with the capital needs of our school system, both in not only new schools, but in renovating our older schools that need to be healthy spaces and conducive to the teaching and learning that we now know is so important in 21st century. And as of Saturday, I want to highlight that there is a new hotline for suicide prevention. 988 has taken this is a simple 3-digit number that now folks who are in crisis, people who are trying to support people in crisis, can call to get a helpline. It's a message from our nationally that both our public and partners with nonprofit centers that are supporting people in crisis can call that number and get help, that there's someone that's going to be there for them. Suicides have been on the increase, both before the pandemic and certainly since, not just among youth, but our veterans, LGBTQ people, and other vulnerable people. So we need to make sure that our school communities and our community knows about this new resource, and I'm grateful for this renewed focus to help people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kushner, and thank you for highlighting that. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. I, too, would like to add my welcome and congratulations to the year-round schools starting a new school year. We really do have school all the time. This school district really does make use of its facilities to the max, and I hope it's a great year for all the students. During the summers, I think it's also important to acknowledge the many students and teachers involved in summer camps. There's a lot of learning that goes on in our schools that's not formally part of the school year, but thanks to all of you doing that work. And also, I think it's worthwhile recognizing that there's a lot of teachers do a lot of professional development over the summer, really oftentimes unpaid and on their own time. So to all the teachers who are involved in that work, congratulations. We know the effort that you put into making sure you are top of your profession. And yes, I do want to have us continually pay attention to COVID. And it's not just COVID, it's public health in general. And I think that we as a school system need to give some really serious thought as to how to proactively make sure people are safe. There are some people who say, hey, it's not that big of a deal because we don't have lots of hospitalizations. But frankly, we don't want people coming to school when they're sick. And whether it's a major case or a minor case, if you're ill, we want you to stay home. And yet we don't want you at home because we want you in school learning, teaching and learning. And so that's why we need to keep cases low. In just this last week, here in the Wake County Public School System, we reported 61 students and 32 staff who came down with COVID. Now, those don't seem like huge numbers, but then again, we also don't have lots of people in session right now. Importantly, 1 year ago, the same week, there were 11 students and 4 staff. So that means where we are today is 8.7 times the number of students and 8 times the number of staff that we were 1 year ago. Here in Wake County, we know that the numbers are very underreported. Most things I'm seeing are saying that they're underreported by somewhere between 7 and 10 times. But the latest numbers show us at about 300 cases per 100,000 population. Multiply that by 7 or 10, it's quite sobering. If you look 1 year ago, when the reporting statistics were probably much better, we had only 50 to 60 cases per 100,000 population. So that means here in Wake County, currently, we're 6 times what we were 1 year ago today. When you look at the state disaggregated data, you see clearly that since school ended, the number of school-age cases dropped to about half that of the general population. The last week reported by state data, there were 137 cases per 100,000 population in the school-age population from 5 to 17, compared to 260 cases per 100,000 population in all of Wake County. When school was in session, the school-age number of cases were generally equal to above the general population. With school out of session, it dropped. So we're going to see it go back up. When you look at the numbers across time, what you see is right now we should be at the bottom of a well. It's going to peak in the fall. All reports show that happening. The problem is the bottom of our well right now is 6 to 8 times what the bottom of our well was a year ago. Cases are going to be up. What does that mean? That means staff are not going to be teaching. That means students are not going to be in class unless we adopt practices that really change our behavior. So I strongly encourage us to not wait till we have a crisis and have to implement mandates, but I strongly encourage us to develop clear and careful public health protocols. We need to work at minimizing sickness so that we can maximize kids in schools. We have the opportunity to work now so that we don't have as big of a problem come the fall. But where the numbers are right now, we've got a lot of work that we need to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Ms. Scott.
And it is summertime, so I don't have a whole lot to share. So I will just say to everyone, welcome back for our year-round schools. I did want to just share this little story that's been on my mind lately as public education and
the importance of it and what is it in its role in our society, which I've said multiple times, and I know all of my colleagues share this, is critical. It's important. It's an important part of our society, and it's important that we support it. It's important that it's provided and provides great opportunities in our schools. And it is one of the few places where people do come together, regardless of political beliefs, religion. I mean, our public schools are supposed to be a place where we do learn to be together and work together and want that for, ideally, for our students, for our children. I know that I was thinking about when my oldest child was in preschool, their favorite activity in preschool was snack time. Not just to eat, not because of the eating, but because of the act of coming around the table. It was the one time where all the kids would come around and they're excited to eat. And so that was something my oldest child always loved, is having people come around to a table to gather for eating. And it was interesting because it reminded me of one of my favorite homilies at church, where the priest discussed coming around the altar, coming around the table for communion, and not the act of communion, but communion and community. So he challenged us to look for opportunities for communion, for community in our lives, and look for altar, opportunities, table, providing opportunities in our lives. And I just think of our public schools as part of that. And we do, yes, we have students gathering around tables, sometimes loudly in the cafeterias. But that it's so important right now. So I hope that when we are seeing divisiveness and reading difficult things and experiencing difficult things in our lives, I challenge all of you to do whatever you can to keep supporting our public schools so we can continue providing those tables, that opportunity for community within our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you. And again, I echo my colleagues' sentiments. Back school is in. The buses are back in my neighborhood. And especially I live in a neighborhood where there is significant road work, so we're all backed up. So again, with our woes with transportation, I'm certain a lot of our children are still going to be late because there's one lane to my house. Probably, I think our Raleigh City Council has told me at least for another year, I'll have one lane to and from my house no matter what. So. And I've notified most of our schools that surround my house because of the transportation. But we're back and the traffic is back, and hopefully, and our students looked excited the first day at the bus stop when I saw them. Not as excited this week, so that's how you know we are fully back in school. You can see the transition of excitement, new backpacks, and it is. It's one, because I have to stop, and so I can see the bus stop leaving my house is right outside my house, and I'm like, the transition is real. But certainly I was excited to see their excitement, especially on the first day. Thank you to my colleague who mentioned the 988 hotline. I want to note that these nonprofits that run it are always looking for resources and volunteers. While this is a great resource to our community nationwide, North Carolina actually is the hub. An agency in Greenville, North Carolina runs the entire national hotline. So volunteers, the agency in Wake County is Helpline. So please see them as an organization to provide support to. They already saw an increase on the 16th, which was the first day of the hotline opening. So that is both exciting and overwhelming of how we're going to keep it up, but also very telling about where we are as a community. And I reached out to them right after on Sunday. I talked to the director, and largely because I just had the opportunity to spend 5 days, 4 nights with 40 young people, and 12 of those young people helped create an Youth Advocacy Institute for and by young people, and they are Wake County Public School students. And again, I got to see them in their element of how smart and brilliant and kind they are, but I also got to see them in their most vulnerable state and being very open about the need for supportive services. And we brought in circle practices at their request. And for me, having been, and these are primarily Black and brown students, I was not that vulnerable or smart at that age. And so there is a great deal of encouragement that I saw, but also a great deal of need. And they easily expressed their need, and we did, like, for any of you who watch reality TV, we did like confessionals so each student could go in and share what they wanted us to know. We were asking them to share what their experiences were, what their feedback was, and one of them in their confessional said, these are things that we should learn in school. These are the things that will make us healthy and whole. And especially as a Black student, I'd be able to thrive in my school building. That was both glad that she could say that, but also hard to hear as a school board meeting. As a school board member, that she didn't see our school as a place for that for her. And so, again, it just gave me, again, a new reason to show up with a new name, a new child specifically, asking that we ensure that our schools meet the needs of all of our students and that those students feel like those places are open doors for them. But again, these are also students that there is no doubt in my mind that they are telling other adults exactly what they want, because they did not hesitate to share their needs and their wants for their community. And certainly they all left on Sunday realizing what we say in the Black communities, that they truly are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And they are also my wildest dreams as I watch them grow and flourish and continue to learn from them. So I remain both hopeful and excited, and shared a lot of this as I prepare. I don't have a Boys and Girls Club in my district, but I am going to go visit on Friday, and they asked that I share some of this with them. So we'll be talking about how can they hold some of those spaces? How can circle practices and confessionals be an option for other nonprofits who provide services and outlets to our students in our community who already do a great deal of work? So yet another great entity in Wake County to support, who really do try to meet the needs of our students here in our community, which means we just have a great deal of partners and a great need to meet for our students. Lastly, I will also say, for me, I love that we can always learn something. So I went to the ribbon cutting of the Tools for Schools facility in Holly Springs, and I learned a whole lot. I only went there to see the amazing box because while I was chair, I always wrote all of our Eagle Scout commendation letters as a former Girl Scout, the importance of acknowledging the hard work and energy they put in. It's certainly a contraption. You will not be able to get any supply that you put in that box out. So it was great to see that. But it was a complete family. The mother is an educator in our schools. The grandmother was an educator. And I also learned a lot about the Masons in Holly Springs. They were the first Mason Lodge to be integrated, and they still have all the writings on their walls when they were a school, and that school also became integrated. So I had a lot of lessons learned from the members of that particular Mason Lodge, and again, thank them for their community partnership and their pure excitement to be involved with Wake County Public Schools and to help our teachers. So rounding out the gratefulness that I hear our community, while the needs are great, but so is the appreciation from our community.
Thank you. Ms. Cash.
Welcome back, year-round schools. Brassfield parents have returned to their site after a year of being off-site. The new principal, which I think is wonderful, Principal Elliott, has, so they have a new principal, they have a new site, and I think that the building is really beautiful. I think the site is a work in progress, but we're working on that, and I'll be out there to visit next week sometime with the PTA. But I heard clearly from every parent that emailed me that the open house was a huge success. And so thank you, Principal Elliott, and thank you for all of those that put this building together for these students and for welcoming us at the Barton Pond Place for a year. I had an opportunity to meet with all of the year-round principals in District 3, multi-track and single-track, And we had an opportunity with Glenn, was out of state, Glenn Carozzo, but he did join us virtually, and we were able to talk a little bit about the future in District 3 of, a single track year-round, the feeder patterns for K-8, multi-track, and just what our projections are as we see some other openings of schools out there. And it gave me a good opportunity to hear from the principals about their challenges, but also about the things they'd like to see for the future. So it gave me an opportunity to really hear what they think, and it'll help as we move to discussions about year-round leaving multi-track schools or going to multi-track schools. So I got to see both sides. And then just finally, I'd like to thank Chair Mahaffey for a very good speech delivering the state of the schools for the Greater Raleigh Chamber, and it was a good event, and I appreciate your well-done job.
Ms. Carter.
Thank you. And I guess I want to start with a shout out to a Cary High teacher that earned an award, I guess, since our last, I'm pretty sure it was. And I've kind of combined some of what Wake County put out and also CertaPro's blog. So just so you know. But just want to congratulate Miss York at Cary High. She was named Educator of the Year by Certaport. She's a CTE teacher at Cary High School, and she's empowered hundreds of students to earn their Microsoft Office Specialist and PMI Project Management Ready certificate is what I'm told that is, or certifications. And this past school year, 100% of her students actually earned their certifications. And while that's awesome, the next part I think really spoke volume to me, that her approachability that was spoken to, and several quotes that were provided by Miguel Campos, I believe, almost a decade ago, had her as a teacher, so bear with me because I'm going to try to read it word for word. She wasn't just my teacher. She is first and foremost a mentor for life. It wasn't just the lessons she would give that impacted me. She also offered powerful life advice. It's been over 10 years since I was in her class, and we still maintain a close relationship. And to me, I think many of us have all mentioned relationships, but I think that really speaks volumes. And building that and continuing with that, a decade later, that's just huge. So thank you very much, Ms. York, and all of our educators out there as well, but in particular, I wanted to highlight her. And tomorrow, there is a special virtual summer camp that is free that I want to just mention, because cutoff to register is today. But it's a Lenovo-sponsored event to encourage particularly girls to consider a future in technology. And 2 high school interns for Lenovo, and one of them is an Enloe student, have created this virtual summer camp that's free, and they called it Girls Belong in Tech. It's for middle and high school students. So if you're looking for something to do, or you have opportunity tomorrow, 3 to 5, and this is something you'd be interested in, please go to their website. It's going to have special guest speakers, games, prizes, and again, totally free. They just ask you register because it is on Zoom, and they will provide you with the link. And their website is Girls Belong in Tech, so intech.com. And last but not least, I will be hosting another D9 Connection meeting on Sunday, July 31st at 7:30 p.m. So if you live in D9, work in D9, or have a student in a D9 school, please consider joining us. This is a time for me to listen to you all. The Google Meet link is in my blog, or you can email me to request it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Waters.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. Glad to be back here today. And for the last couple of days, I have been at the North Carolina School Boards Association attending core training, and I really value all the information that I was able to glean there. And also it was great to see school board members from across the state and to gain knowledge and build community there. And Boys and Girls Club has gotten some attention here today. A great organization. And one of the things that I learned was that they have always been a fully integrated organization, even in the Jim Crow era. So that was great fact that I did not know. And I had a chance to visit the location on Raleigh Boulevard, which is the Boys Club, and I'm a boy mom, and so I really appreciated seeing all of our young men there who are participating in amazing activities from robotics, STEM, so many ways to capture their attention and to invest in them. So really glad we have that partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. And Ms. Kushner, I hope I can get a chance to visit Brentwood Center at some point. I'd also like to highlight some retirements for District 4 principals. Principal Pamela Johnson, who is a longtime principal of Carnegie, has retired, and I was fortunate enough to chat with her before she left, and I did not realize she had been a student at Carnegie, and so that was really a neat fact to see. And last night, Davie Street Presbyterian Church had a community leaders meeting, and I actually met one of Principal Johnson's former teachers, and so just amazing to see kind of that community and giving Ms. Scott talking about that community building. So great to see that legacy and the impact of our teachers and how it comes back to us full circle as many come to work in the district. And Principal Kendra Culverson is looking forward to her retirement, and I appreciate her diligence in supporting the move for Fuller into their new building. And I am going to get a tour soon, and so very excited to get a peek into the new building. And I also learned that she attended Enloe High School. So there again, those ties back to the district. And Principal Catherine Faison, I hope she is enjoying her retirement time as well. So really excited to welcome our new principals as they come into their roles. And I want to make note of a very important date. Tuesday, July 26th, which is next week, is the 32nd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and this is important civil rights legislation that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in the public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, public and private places. So if you'd like to learn more, you can visit 88anniversary.org and make note of that important date in our country's history. And so I thank you for this time.
All right. Thank you, board members. At this point, we are at the approval of our meeting agenda. We do have some amendments before we get approval. Moving from consent to action is facilities, item C, which is the consulting contract with Cumming Management Group, and academic advancement, item C, driver education contract with Jordan Driving School for 2022-23. And we are pulling from the meeting agenda facilities, item E, which is the design consultant selection and mobile classroom installation for Heritage High School. We're looking to get some more information before that gets approved. So with those amendments to the agenda, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions or further discussion? All right, all in favor, please signify by sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you. That is approved. We now move on to public comment. Public comment is accepted in video, written, and in-person formats. Members of the public are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at substantive ideas, actions, or procedures of the board and individual board members. The laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for a public comment setting. Concerns related to personnel issues may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. Those offering comments to the board, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern, but should refrain from discussing confidential student information. Concerns related to confidential student matters may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. We have written comments, which are a part of our public comment portion of this evening's agenda. These comments are linked on the same online agenda we're using for tonight's meeting, and that agenda, as well as guidelines for those wishing to submit comments for future meetings, can be found at the school district's website, wcpss.net, under the tab labeled School Board. We have 39 written comments and 1 video comment from members of the public. The topics and comments are as follows. We have 24 comments on Election Day, 11 on COVID precautions, 1 on inclusive classroom environments protecting students, 1 on student rights, 1 on Title IX changes, 1 on school safety security associates, and 1 on school safety body scanners. For those of you that are here for public comment this evening, during public comment, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. A yellow light will illuminate at the podium when there are 30 seconds remaining in your time, and then a red light will signal your time is up. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, speakers are encouraged to address their comments to the Board of Education and to refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, or members of the general public. Please remain at the podium during your speaking time. Any materials you wish to share with the board should be handed to the board attorney, seated right over here, either before or after your comments. We have 4 speakers this evening. Our first speaker is Daniel Grant King.
Good evening, Superintendent Moore, Chairman Haffey, and board members, and welcome back. As we have gone underway from the previous school year into the next, hopefully our year-round and certified calendar schools have officially back open and running. Also, I serve currently as chair with the State Board of Ed Advocacy Committee. And as you all may know by now, we are back in session. As a matter of fact, we will be meeting a long week session from the 25th through the end of that week, and we'll be getting ready to propose some plans for the upcoming school year. We had an emergency meeting today as well from 9 this morning up until 4 o'clock. And we had decided and determined, with all the things that have gone on regarding the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and many others, that it is now time to have a safety commission across the state. And the reason for this safety commission is that we could have our parents, our community, elected officials, school board members, and many others to come together and think of creative ways to ensure that safety is top priority in our public schools. Also, we will be meeting and discussing how we're going to deal with that process underway in our closed session in the upcoming week. Also, regarding the budget, it has been duly noted that Governor Cooper has signed the budget into law, and I look forward to this board and staff to hopefully work in a bipartisan way and working together to make sure that educators are basically compensated for the work that they do each and every day in our classrooms. Also, I will continue to advocate that this board and many school systems across this state make sure that not only safety is a priority, but to make sure that our teachers and staff are appreciated. I have heard from one of my colleagues today that she has resigned from the school system. And the reason it being is because of lack of support from elected officials and this Board of Education. I highly encourage you to think about what you do and how you can make it assurance to educators that even if they are not leaving the profession, what will you do?
Thank you, Mr. Grant King. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kristen Morrison.
Good evening. Thank you so much for acknowledging the community concern regarding students on campus during election days and when schools are used as polling locations at your work session this afternoon. And thank you to the staff who put together the options for you to consider. That's a lot of work, and we really appreciate it. On behalf of over 650 Wake County Public School System stakeholders who signed the Safe School Polling petition, which Ms. McMullen and myself shared in our public written comments, we respectfully request that you approve calendar changes that keep students off campus for all election days moving forward, inclusive of the smaller election days. Exactly 1 week from today, voters are going to enter 24 year-round schools to participate in the secondary primary election. Year-round students, including my son, are going to be learning in classrooms that are just steps away from voters. While voter turnout for next week's election is projected to be lower than the general election in November, it's still unsettling because permitting even one person in school buildings when the established school safety protocol can't be followed, such as securing identification, is an unnecessary risk for our students, for our kids. Each of the 9 districts in Wake County has between 5 and 11 schools that serve as polling locations, and 7 of the districts have between 2 and 6 year-round schools that are going to be serving as a polling location just next week. And the Board of Elections has added an additional 5 schools, or commandeered them, for the election next week, one of which is a year-round school, so students will be in session. School safety on election days is truly a district-wide concern, and we appreciate your commitment to keeping our students safe by working to keep them out of the school buildings when voters are sharing those buildings as polling locations. Ms. McMullen has a few things to add about our initiative next. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McMullen, you're up next.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I would like to take this time to thank the board for your work around this issue at your work session today. I felt compelled to advocate for this change after my daughter shared about her school day back on the morning of May 17th when her middle school was being used as a polling site for the primary election. She found herself in a hallway walking toward 3 unknown young adult males who were ultimately escorted out of the building. As a result of my collaboration with Ms. Morrison, it became quite clear that our sentiments resonated with many stakeholders who shared similar comments on the Change.org petition, such as, for the safety of the children in our schools, during election days, schools should be closed when they are used as polling locations. And I don't feel it's appropriate or safe to have multiple people coming in and out of the schools while they are in session. While amending multiple Wake County academic calendars is undoubtedly a huge undertaking, I feel that this issue is important enough to warrant exactly that. It may take creative solutions, like using banked days or making the days remote learning days until we're no longer allowed to do that. No matter what the days end up being called, I am confident that this school board can do the work to get it done. After all, we are all working for the same goal, keeping our students safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our final speaker tonight is Christina Spears.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Vice Chair Hagerty, and board members, Superintendent Moore, and district staff. I'm Christina Spears, a special education teacher by trade, currently serving as Wake NCAE's president. We are the local affiliate of the North Carolina Association of Educators, part of the National Education Association, the largest labor union in the United States. My goal as a representative of our rank and file members of Wake NCAE is to defend and transform our public schools for our students, staff, families, and community members. I want to echo all of you in saying happy 22-23 school year and welcome back to our year-round folks. There is so much to love and celebrate about our public schools. So I want to take the time to do just that by celebrating another successful year, beginning another year-round track. We giggle at the term clopening, but I want to recognize the time and labor public school workers put in a matter of days to close one year and open another. Even when most of our schools are out for summer break, Wake County continues to be recognized for their rockstar teachers, effective STEM and magnet programs, and intentional conversations about school safety. Though it's clear our public schools have aspects that we should love and celebrate, they are also under attack by privatizers and sheep's clothing. Our General Assembly recently passed a lackluster budget that doesn't fairly compensate workers, especially our veteran educators, and doesn't address the court's decision to fully equitably fund our public schools through the Leandro Plan. Our Board of Education and DPI are working to push a proposal for teacher licensure and compensation that will drive teachers out of the classroom, deprofessionalize teaching, or even worse. So it's our responsibility to defend our teachers and transform our public schools for our students, our families, and our community members. I'm intentional in using that our language, as we all must accept responsibility to defend and transform our schools. As election season is upon us after candidate filing closed last week, all of us, voters and taxpaying citizens, should be critical in our engagement during this election and campaign season. I urge public school allies, community members, voters to engage in conversations with school board members and candidates, to learn about them, understand their values, and get clear on their goals for leading our public schools. I hope folks will consider how their vote directly impacts the livelihood of our public schools, not just this year, but beyond. We should elect candidates who are proud to send their students to public schools and treasure them as the heart of our communities. Thank you for your time and labor.
Thank you. This concludes public comment, and I appreciate all of you who came out to speak or took the time to write comments. At this point, we have one information item that we've started doing, which is our superintendent update. So I'll pass it over to Ms. Moore.
Good evening again. As has become our practice, I am providing updates on the information that was shared with the board during work session, as numerous folks in the community tune in to the board meeting but do not always attend or listen, or able to listen to the work session. We had two items that were covered in our work session today. The first one was staff providing information to the board about different options that could be implemented in order to make November 8th, which is an election day, a teacher work day, a day off, those kinds of things, so that voters would not be present in the building with students at the same time. There were three different options presented to the board. The board has gave a thumbs up to, and staff will bring a recommendation for option 3, which will use one of the banked days that we have reserved in order to implement that as a day that will be off for students and staff. That still leaves 2 banked days in the queue for us to use for inclement weather moving forward, and it protects the time that has already been set aside for teacher training and those kinds of things on November 4th and other dates that were some of the options that were floating around. So thank you for board feedback there. And that will come as an action item to the board to revise that calendar at your first August board meeting. The second item that we covered in the work session was part 3 of the Comprehensive Plan for Equitable Discipline Practices presentation. Lots of good discussion. This particular portion of the presentation focused on the data that was collected during the 1920-2021 school years, where those were not really normal years. And we know that that data is not really representative of what we would consider a full traditional routine sort of school year. And so we want to just issue that caveat at the beginning when you take a look at that presentation. Lots of good board discussion around what is in the data, what is not in the data. Some questions around ways that we could dig a little deeper, because it's, there's 2 issues with the data. There is suspensions, in-school suspensions, alternative learning centers, the things that we call exclusionary discipline practices that take a student out of instruction, and how those are reported and how we understand how we learn from that data in order to improve our response, our tools, and our resources that are provided to support students staying in classroom, because that's what needs to happen in order for learning and teaching to happen. And then In addition, really looking at the disproportionality in that data in terms of who is represented. Even though the numbers may be low for the district, there is still disproportionality. There were some questions about benchmarking with districts outside of North Carolina, some additional potential review of what is being communicated to schools and how support is being provided to the classroom to provide some greater parity around expectations at the district level, even though we know that implementation at the school level can vary. But to do that through perhaps some greater alignment at the district level with what our messaging and priorities are, tools, resources, training, et cetera. Those were the things that we covered today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Moore. I will now take a motion to approve our consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Johnson-Hostler, a second by Ms. Kushner. Any questions? All in favor, please signify by sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, consent agenda passes. We have 7 items on the action agenda today, starting with 5 in policy. So we will begin with Board Policy 2121, Board Member Conflict of Interest. And Dr. Julie Crane will be joining us for this. Dr. Crane.
Chairman Haffey, Superintendent Moore, members of the board, good evening. I'm here to present our first reading of revised policy 2121, Board Member Conflict of Interest. Revisions reflect updates made by the North Carolina School Boards Association and by staff. It was reviewed at the June 28, 2022 Policy Committee meeting. At that meeting, the committee directed staff to add language from General Statute 14-234.3 that provides the definition of a nonprofit. You'll find that language added in blue on page 2 of the revised policy. When given final board approval, it will replace our current policy. Tonight, we request the board's approval of the first reading of revised policy 2121, Board Member Conflict of Interest.
All right. And just a reminder, we do first reading and then a second reading, so that if any members of the public have any concerns, they can reach out to their board members. In the meantime, I will kick it over to Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chairman Haffey, and with that, I'll make a motion that we approve revisions to Board Policy 2121, Board Member Conflict of Interest, to reflect changes in state statute and other recommended language from the School Board Association.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, please signify with the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? All right, thank you, Dr. Crane. We now have Board Policy 4100, Admission to the Wake County Public School System for first reading, and Susan Pulliam, our Senior Director of Student Assignment, was joining us for this.
Good evening, Chairman Haffey, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. I'm here to present the first reading of our revised Policy 4100, Admission to the Wake County Public School System. Revisions reflect updates made by the North Carolina School Board Association and by staff. The policy was reviewed at the June 28, 2022 Policy Committee meeting. At that meeting, the committee directed staff to incorporate additional language in Section J, notification of change in domicile or other change in circumstances. You will see and find the added language highlighted in yellow on pages 10 and 11 of the revised policy. When given final board approval, the revised version will replace current policy. Tonight, we request the board's approval of the first reading of revised policy 4100, admission to the Wake County Public School System.
All right.
And with that, Chairman Haffey, I move approval of the revisions to 4100, admission of the Wake County Public School System policy revisions as related. And as you can see, as Ms. Pulliam outlined, there's both blue and red to reflect both our Wake County changes. The red is from School Board Association, and mainly is driven by the changes to the military compact that we have with military dependents. Thank you. That's a long motion. So.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kushner. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. With that, are there any questions, comments from board members? All right. Seeing none, all in favor, please signify with, yeah, you got one?
No, I was just going to add that I appreciated the changes that were made, not on the military compact, but in terms of providing notice to families when there was a change of their, what would we call it, Yeah, I was going to call their qualification for attendance for enrollment in the system. I thought that was very well worded, and I appreciate you taking those concerns, so thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, this passes, and Ms. Pulliam is staying with us for the next one.
Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Board, members of the board, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. I'm also here to present the first reading of our revised policy 4150, school assignment and transfers. Revisions reflect updates, again, made by the North Carolina School Board Association and by staff. The policy was reviewed at the June 28, 2022 Policy Committee meeting. At that meeting, the committee directed staff to incorporate additional language in Section C, assignment of students to particular schools, in numbered item 1 specifically, students admitted based on domicile. You will find the added language highlighted in yellow on page 4 of the revised policy. Additionally, after submitting the documents to you for review, we were advised by council that we should insert additional language within that same paragraph on page 4 in the second sentence. We're proposing to add the phrase "within Wake County" so that the new sentence would read, "If such notice is provided within 45 days of the change in domicile within Wake County, comma, the family will be given the option of reassignment to the school of the same grade span in the new attendance area or continued assignment at the previously assigned school for the remainder of that school year." That language will appear when the policy comes for second reading to the board. When given final approval by the board, the revised version will replace current policy. Tonight, we do request that the board approve the first reading of the revised policy 4150, school assignment and transfers.
And Chairman Mahaffey, I'd like to make a motion that we approve revisions to 4150, school assignment and transfers for first reading.
Second.
Okay. You have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Cash.
I do think this policy needs some more work, and I was at policy, and I think I brought this up at that meeting. I think Mr. Caruso and Ms. Pulliam, you might know that, there are some areas in there about capped schools that I think we might want to talk a little more about who is eligible to come back to a capped school. And I was thinking about having a poll tonight just to emphasize some discussion we might have, but I'm okay with the first reading that we can do. And I also, there is a sentence in, I think it's under CAP school. Most of my concerns are under the CAP school, which is an area where I've been looking at to begin with. So that is one who, in the area of what students can come back to a CAP school while living in at the same address. So maybe some discussion around that. And then there is one other, I think, Ms. Moore, you can say something. I'll let you talk.
I was just going to say to put a little more of a clarification based on my conversation with you, Ms. Cash, and for the rest of the board members, there was some question about how the capping rules work for students who separate from WCPSS and then wish to return to WCPSS, and perhaps that the capping language provided there was an opportunity to look a little bit more deeply at the language and in those types of scenarios, which are becoming more frequent with the opportunities that families have to make other choices.
May I ask a clarifying question? Currently, most of that guidance is included in the RNP and the regulations and procedures, so is it the board's pleasure that we continue to look at that section and bring that through our normal processes, or were we looking to actually amend policy language?
That's a really good question.
I think it would be perhaps, Ms. Kushner, and not being the chair of the policy committee, just submitting this for your consideration, passing this as is, but bringing it back so that we can look at that with the RNP and seeing if any of it should be elevated to a policy level or remain in RNP so we can specifically talk about the capping. Does that work for you, Ms. Cash?
Well, I do believe there is one sentence on Section B that was actually brought to my attention, and Mr. Caruso is aware of it, There is a sentence that says students in membership at the CAP school on the implementation date specified by the board shall be eligible to attend the CAP school. And that became problematic when you do a reassignment, and that sentence is in there. Now, I know reassignment may be addressed different, but this is our policy. So I'd like to address that, and I do feel like sometimes this policy is where parents come to for issues, and I don't know RMP. I'd prefer to have the discussion about the CAPS handled during policy configuration.
I do wonder if that specific sentence could be handled by changing the shall to a may. And then the expounding of that happens in RMP perhaps. But I think what we'd have to determine is if there's comfort level on whether or not we should pass on first reading with that specific issue in the language in that sentence to be reviewed prior to a second reading, as well as concurrently a determination about what goes in the RMP or doesn't go in the RMP based on what you determine about the specific language in the policy. And
I think
I see Jonathan ready to speak.
The only thing that I would say on that is that you can pass it on first reading with the understanding that at second reading there will be some language brought back and to make it an action, not a consent item on second reading, so that staff works on it and comes up with a change to that it's presented in full by that time.
And if second reading is not adequate, we can make a motion to table, so it can
Yeah,
go
at that
back to
point, if
policy.
you can't work it out, it can be approved without that change, and that issue can be sent to policy, or you can decide to just table it and send it to policy then.
Okay.
So you'd
Ms.
have your
Kushner?
options at that point. But
I would be welcome to hear feedback from colleagues. And to better understand specifically the concerns about capping. I do, as you all know, I find capping very inefficient, especially now with our transportation stresses. And I also want us to be fair. If there's a new student who's moved into a neighborhood and wants to enroll in a capped school and they want to be there and stay there, I don't want that student pushed out. If this is summarizing some of your concerns, Ms. Cash, I don't want that student pushed out for someone who's left Wake County maybe multiple times, and then is trying to come back. So I do want us to be fair to students who want to be in a school that might be capped. I think capping is best used to close it to transfers from the outside, but I think we need to think through just being very effective with any cap that's on a school. So Chairman Haffey, I don't know how you want to handle the discussions. If
No, your commentary made me think of a question, and I know we may not have that data right now, but Ms. Pulliam, do you have data, and can you share with us data on how many times this scenario comes up and how many students have left or unenrolled in Wake County schools to go to another option and then come back? I'd be interested to know what those numbers are and maybe if, where they are around the district.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is it'll be interesting to see what we see.
Okay.
Well, I think in addition to that, I think it's good to also see how many kids are leaving a CAP school to leave the system, because that may give us an indication of how we can use numbers to project whether we cap a school or uncap a school, because that's kind of where I'm going in my district right now.
And a follow-up question to my other question is, how many students are leaving that are already enrolled in the school to enroll in a different school setting, or how many are enrolling in a different school setting because they are capped out?
Right. Right.
Dr.
So I
Martin.
believe this may be simplified by a simple word, by just suggesting that students contiguously in membership at the school. I think that would take care of your concern, because if you're contiguous means continuing in time.
No, contiguous is more side by
No.
side. I
Yeah.
would go continuously.
Continuously
would be a better word.
Okay, continuously, but the point is, if you're continuously in membership, I think we want to say that this is okay. if you're coming in and out, then you're back under the conditions of the cap, just like if you were a new resident to the area.
Well, there are two things that kind of handles one of them pretty well. The second item I brought up. I also want to be sure that students in continuous membership at a CAP school at the time of implementation understand that they can be reassigned, even though the
Yes.
policy says
Yes.
specified by the board shall be eligible to attend that school. So there are two items, and continuous might not take care of the first one.
So I'm trying to understand that last piece. So you're suggesting that if a student who has lived in their house since the district put a cap on the school, and maybe they were at that school and then left, and what, no? And
If I may?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think, Ms. Cash, I had not seen this, but, I mean, you have identified what could be a potential loophole. I think the context of the policy is a lot more clear, but someone could argue it this way. Say, Chair Mahaffey, if you lived in an assignment area of like a high school that was capped, and therefore you were in membership at the capped school on the implementation date, right, of the capped school, but then in order to relieve capping, maybe we reassigned you to another school opened, or for whatever reason. But could a parent come back to this policy and say, well, look, I was in membership of that capped school at the date, and therefore I'm eligible to attend the capped school regardless of your reassignment? I think that's the point that was raised. And so in that case, I had not seen that. A little bit of clarifying language could help that and just prevent some conflict.
If I may?
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as shall be eligible to attend the CAP school as long as it remains the base school for the student's address or something like that. And that would capture both sides. If you like the continuously, we could look at the shall versus the may and see where that plays in. But if something to clarify that the intent of the policy is to say that if you haven't moved and the school assignment hasn't changed for where you live, you should be allowed to stay if you've stayed continuously enrolled, regardless of what's happening with the cap. Am I capturing that intent? And then the secondary concern of if I've left or if I've made some other choice and I want to come back at a different grade level, then the rules might be slightly different because you've not been in continuous membership.
Yeah, one other option, I mean, the students I'm looking at this sentence, students in continuous membership at the CAP school on the implementation date specified by the board, you might want to change will instead of shall, but shall be eligible to attend the CAP school, comma, unless the students are reassigned through the board's approved enrollment plan or reassignment plan, and then you're covered. I mean, if they're reassigned through that, you adopt it, it's a board-approved enrollment plan.
Does that align with what you just said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I do think you've touched on, I think when we've gotten so complicated in how we handle it, because it is important, and, these are, it's the currency of the realm, right? The seats that we have in our school system, and we have to be fair in how we do enrollment of students, particularly now. So I think it is incredibly important that we're not just clear in policy, but that when we do our student assignment plans, we're really clear communicating them. I think the staff is doing a great job, but just to underscore how we need to be very clear in our communication and our intent. So I appreciate Ms. Cash raising this today. And I hope this addresses some of your concerns, but I'm also, if you want to bring it back to policy.
It addresses, that was well said. Thank you, everybody. That was well said. That addresses the thing that could hang us up during student assignment. But I do still want to talk about the other as leaving and coming back and where you fall in the capping, because it's all tied to the address. And that may be an RMP, but I don't know.
If I may, I think by adding the word continuous, that would give us the space we would need to update the RNP to reflect that.
Students in continuous membership, so they can't leave and come back. They got to be in continuous membership at the CAP school on the implementation. specified by the board shall be eligible to attend this CAP school. And then you also, unless they're reassigned through your board-approved assignment plan. So what I hear, but tell me if I'm missing something, what I hear is that the original changes the board's fine with, the board, tell me if anybody disagrees, is comfortable with the change to this sentence that you've talked about, and so that it would come back at second reading if you approve first reading tonight with that change, and that would maybe cover the issues that have been discussed.
Do we need to formalize that as an amendment to the motion, or
I think
can we
we
just
would need
do it with
to.
second reading?
I mean, I think it can come, I think there's a consensus for it to come back second reading with that way. So you could approve it as written, and there's a consensus for it to come back with a change for second reading.
And to have it on action so that
Have it on action.
we can have staff present. And I appreciate the highlighted in yellow, so just to draw our eyes to it.
That's all, Julie.
Thank you.
All right. Is there further questions or discussion?
Thanks for saving an item from the policy committee. I appreciate it.
All right. With that said, knowing that when this comes back to us on action for second reading, there will be some changes. As discussed this evening, is all in favor of adopting policy 4150, school assignment and transfers on first reading, please say aye. Any opposed? Nay? All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And to clarify, we will still follow up with an information item on any adjustments to the RMP.
All right, thank you very much. Up next is Board Policy 6220, Operation of School Nutrition Services for first reading. And with us is Ms. Paula DeLuca, Senior Director of Child Nutrition Services.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. I'm here to present to you the first reading of Policy 6220, Operation of Child Nutrition Services. Board Policy 6220, Operation of Child Nutrition Services, is being presented as a revised policy that incorporates two revisions that reflect updates to the North Carolina School Boards Association Policies to Lead the Schools Manual. The policy was reviewed at the June 28, 2022 Policy Committee meeting. When given final board approval, it will replace current policy 6220, Operation of Child Nutrition Services, and we request the board's approval on first reading of policy 6220, Operation of Child Nutrition Services.
Ms. Kushner?
Chair Mahaffey, I make a motion that we approve revisions to policy 6220, Operation of Child Nutrition Services on first reading.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions, comments, concerns from board members? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by sign of aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the motion passes. Thank you, Ms. DeLuca.
Thank you.
Our next is Board Policy 8305, Federal Grant Administration for first reading, and our Finance Officer, Mark Winters, will be presenting.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. I'm here to present the first reading of our revised Board Policy 8305, Federal Grants Administration. The revisions reflect updates made by the North Carolina School Boards Association. It was reviewed June 28, 2022 at the Policy Committee meeting. And when given final board approval, it will replace current policy. Tonight, we request the board's approval of the first reading of revised Policy 8305, Federal Grants Administration.
Chair Mahaffey, I make a motion that we give approval on first reading to Federal Grant Administration Policy 8305 with the revisions as presented.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kushner and Vice Chair Haggerty. Are there any questions, comments, concerns from the board? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving Board Policy 8305 on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you, Mr. Winters. All right, moving on to the facilities portion of our agenda. This is the consulting contract with the Cumming Management Group, which has been moved to action. And presenting to us today is our Chief of Facilities and Operations, Mr. Mark Strickland.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. This evening, for your consideration and approval, is a request to extend the existing Cumming Management Group contract through the end of the current fiscal year 2022-23 for $1,733,363. Cumming Group is currently providing direct executive management of our facilities design and construction department. They are providing assistance in organizational alignment, refinement of processes and procedures and policies. We have modified this contract several times throughout the years. Tonight, we're bringing this to you for review and approval to carry us through the end of August of 2023, and all of this would be requested pending final approval of our board attorney. Be glad to answer any questions or hear any feedback.
All right, before we do that, let's get a motion to approve the contract in a second, and then we'll move on to any discussion.
Motion to approve.
Second. All right, thank you, Dr. Martin and Vice Chair Haggerty. Ms. Carter, did you have anything since you requested this to be pulled, or are you ready for us to vote?
Well, I can just reiterate if that's fine. Just as I did in 2021, I asked it be moved to action. I just have concern about the cost, and that's why I cannot support it again. So just wanted to voice that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carter. Any others? All right, with that, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay? Okay, so that is 8-1 with Ms. Carter dissenting. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Strickland. Up next with academic advancement is our driver education contract with Jordan Driving School for this coming school year, or this current school year of 2022 to 23, which has been moved to action. And Mr. Drew Cook, our Assistant Superintendent of Academics this year, to present.
Good evening, Board Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, members of the board. In June, the Wake County Public School System accepted a bid from Jordan Driving School to continue to provide driver education services for the Wake County Public School System, as they have done now since 1992. The awarded contract includes a 2-year renewal option. Jordan Driving School meets all state requirements to operate a quality driver's education instructional program for all Wake County students. The total projected contract cost is $1,800,000 to serve approximately 14,100 students during the 22-23 fiscal year. Driver education state funds will cover all costs of the program. As a related update and for additional context, you may recall that in April of this year, staff requested and the board approved an amendment to the previous Jordan Driving School contract to repurpose funds for additional contracts to address behind-the-wheel backlog that had accumulated during the pandemic. As you know, but for the benefit of others that may be listening in, driver education consists of 2 parts, classroom instruction and behind the wheel. A backlog formed during the pandemic related to the required behind-the-wheel driving primarily due to 2 things. Number 1, a period of time where behind-the-wheel driving could not be safely implemented. And 2, a lack of drivers returning to this work after the pandemic due to increases in pay opportunities in other fields, among other factors. Those supplemental contracts will remain in place through September of this year and will continue to pay a higher rate per person for completion of behind-the-wheel training to compensate for current market costs of staff, gasoline, and other necessary costs related to program delivery. So for the next couple of months, those backlog contracts will continue to run in addition to the full-year annual contract with Jordan that is up for your approval this evening. And just a quick note with an update on the progress that's been made since these supplemental contracts were approved by the board and executed back in April. This past winter and into the spring of this year, there was an average wait of 6 and sometimes, unfortunately, up to 7 months between the classroom instruction and the behind-the-wheel driving piece. I'm happy to report that as of this week in mid-July, that time frame has now been reduced closer to an average of 3 to 4 months, which is still a significant gap, but certainly an improvement and movement in the right direction. Given current trends and progress being made by the end of September, we project to return to an average wait of 2 to maybe 2.5 months, which is much closer to what was the pre-pandemic norm. The monthly contract established minimum quota for drivers this summer has been 16 students, although we've seen some drivers be able to serve as many as 30 students in a month, which has obviously contributed to bringing that backlog way down. Each of the vendors have worked hard to help alleviate the backlog, even as they continue with fewer staff than normal or what would be ideal. So with that background and context in mind, staff is requesting approval of the contract with Jordan Driving School for the 22-23 school year. And of course, happy to answer any questions or provide additional information that you may seek.
All right.
Chair Mahaffey, I'd move for approval of the contract.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Hagerty and a second by Ms. Scott. And I'm not going to throw it to anyone in particular because myself and many board members wanted this to be brought to action. But Ms. Cash, I saw your hand up first. Okay, Ms. Kushner, you can go first.
Given that teaching my children to drive was my absolute least favorite parenting activity, I do appreciate the service they provide. But I also am glad to have this update. Mr. Cook, thank you for bringing that to us because I know it was a great concern to have a backlog as well as and how difficult it is for them to have gone forward, but also for us to be able to make this equitable across the district for our students. Thank you for the update.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
So we had the backlog. There was developed a have and have not situation with the private companies, including Jordan's driving school having a private company. And therefore, a lot of people that could pay Jordan higher, including other companies, paid for that outside of our driving contract. So how do we, and even though the backlog will be brought down, I don't know that we can let that not happen again, but do we have some safety ideas in mind on?
So I think what you're referencing, what we want to be sure of, right, is that Jordan or any other vendor that we contract with is honoring the contract as it's outlined. And I think, for example, what you're referencing is whether or not a student who does have the financial means potentially can go take private classes at Jordan or other vendors for a much higher fee than what the districts and what other school districts provide to those contractors. And so we routinely communicate with Jordan and have with our other vendors as well to reiterate and emphasize that this is the contract. And certainly students will always have the latitude, if they choose, to go pay a higher fee to go take a class through Jordan or any other vendor than what the district contracts with. But I think we've addressed that and will continue to address that concern. And it's very often it's classroom teachers that are interacting, drivers ed instructors that are interacting with students. And so our staff has continued to emphasize the importance of making sure students understand that, this is the program that they have access to for a much lower fee. And I think to your point, what we don't want to see is where students that have the financial means can kind of take the express lane, for lack of a better term, and work through the behind-the-wheel training at a much faster pace. So we have addressed that and will continue to address the concern if it should arise again.
Mr. Cook, thank you so much for addressing that with them. And I know that the fact that I know that that will continue some, but the starkness of a child being able to pay and get a return for 2 to 3 weeks for their drivers with us being, we know there was quite a starkness. I don't expect it to all go away, but the fact that you're watching that and you've had the dialogue makes me feel so much better, and that the private company or the companies know that we're aware of that as a problem for us. So thank you, though.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any further questions? All right, that being said, yes, thank you, well said. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
All right, I will now accept a motion to go into closed session.
Chair Mahaffey, at this time, I would move that we go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under General Statute 143-318.11A1, A3, and A6, and to consider Thomas versus WCPSS IC number 14-509172. Further, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided for under General Statute 143-318.11. And finally, to consider confidential student information protected under General Statute 115C402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 United States Code 1232G.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hagerty. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Kushner. All right. Any questions or concerns moving into closed session? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by a sign of aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, we are now in closed session. Thank you.